Luc Bouchard with Solve Act Life Coaching Services. I've been a certified life skills coach for 22 years, and I specialize in men's issues and how men distance themselves emotionally from others. Welcome. Today is the 34th day of the 72-day challenge. We're in week 5. The weekly theme is men keeping themselves emotionally safe. The daily focus is emotionality, and the topic is anger, the great distancing behavior. So thank you for coming back, and I appreciate you tuning in once again. I'm going to talk a fair amount about anger today, and it's a bit of an extension of video 32, which was aired 2 days ago. And video 32 was about men and distancing behaviors, and what I covered was that men engage in many different types of ways to keep themselves safe and to keep people kind of distant so that they don't have an emotional connection with them, because it's not a great place for them to be. Because generally, men aren't authentic with themselves, so they can't be authentic with others. So they do the stuff that keeps people back. And those things, some of those things that I covered were humor, sarcasm, being into their intellects, and really, being able to argue a lot, and kind of that behavior, grandiosity, willful ignorance, not admitting when they're wrong and always having to be right, and not accepting help. Today, I'm going to talk about how men keep themselves emotionally safe through their anger. And I just want to first talk about the mechanisms of anger, and well, I'm going to get to the mechanisms, but really what anger is about in a lot of ways. And anger, in my estimation, has got a bit of a bad rap. We hear a lot about men having to deal with their anger management, or need to take anger management. It's in popular culture. We see it on sitcoms. And what I think is often misunderstood about anger is how great of a motivator it is, and how it helps people find their voice, especially for people who are struggling with their anger, and anger's not okay, because let's face it, a lot of people have issues with anger because a lot of negative anger has been imparted upon them inappropriately. And people are fearful of their anger because it's generally been used to hurt them quite a bit, and then there's been a lot of behaviors done towards them that have been dressed up in anger. So A, we have issues with anger, B, we don't understand it, and C, we don't really see the upside to it in a lot of ways. When I used to teach anger management courses to men, I would often talk about that anger is really a good thing if you know how to use it and when to use it. It's not okay when you are constantly falling back on it, and that's your point of reference, and how at a time and a place anger can be really quite good. And I'll often say to men, don't get rid of your anger, just augment it with other stuff. And one of the biggest misconceptions I have found that people have with anger is that they think they need to be not angry. And anger management is not getting rid of your anger. Anger management is understanding it when the time and the place is, how we get angry, why we get angry, and what happens when we get angry. And everything from what happens in the head to the physiological responses and all that kind of stuff. So really the point is, keep your anger, that should be only one of many ways of handling social situations where you are not pleased or happy with something. So because men are socially sanctioned, and it's okay, and we've been trained to deal with anger, being pissed off, being mad, basically what it is that we haven't learned how to deal with the stuff that's actually what's propping that up, what's holding up those feelings. And the other thing that people don't understand about, I find people don't understand about anger is that anger is often considered to be a secondary emotion. And that we actually don't feel anger first. We feel other stuff first, but because our intellect kicks over and we go to this place of, we bypass that stuff, anger is where we go. And what we generally feel before we feel anger is hurt or fear, and mostly hurt. But because it's not okay to feel hurt and it's not okay to experience fear, what we do is we go into this, this posturing. We go into this external stuff. And that comes back to our conditioning and all the stuff I talk about. But if we understood that anger is really about our feelings of feelings of hurt and fear first and foremost, and we know that, then that gives a mechanism to actually deal with it differently. Because if you just think that you're angry automatically, then what happens is that's what you act, is angry automatically. So the things that are going on under the anger, besides the hurt and the fear, are really about the vulnerable feelings we don't want to deal with. And those are shame, guilt, there's my hand, anxiety, fear, neediness. And those are what really are we're trying to avoid when we get angry. We don't want to feel those. And in a lot of ways, it's easier to deal with the anger than it is those things, because that's what we've been told. Now, when it comes to the difference between men and women, if women exhibit typical male behaviors on how they deal with frustration or anger, such as posturing, or if they're forthright or they're assertive to the point of being aggressive, or if they are in your face, as we would call it, then they're often seen as ball-breaking bitches, which is curious. And if men do those behaviors, that's just men being men. Conversely, if men engage in behaviors that women are more socially sanctioned to do, such as crying, weepy, bitching, complaining, and depression, then that's not okay. So we both have our socially sanctioned behaviors and actions that we can do. Men can be angry and women can be crying. And if we cross over that, then there's a lot of criticism around that. And generally, both that stuff, what women go through and what men go through, are, those are, in a lot of ways, that's the deeper emotions. And women are allowed to go to the more shame-based stuff, or the stuff that's more just unpalatable, than men are. But we both have our kind of ways of supposed to be handling stuff. So I just want to illustrate the point that anger is a defense mechanism that meant to keep us safe. And that's not necessarily a bad thing when we need to have it and we're threatened, but it's not really conducive to having healthy relationships with our children and our spouses and our friends. If you're constantly going to anger when you are hurt or frustrated or scared, basically that keeps people out here, because they don't want to deal with it. Who wants to deal with the anger? We've all had people in our life who are perpetually pissed off. Guess what? They're pretty lonely. The other thing I really want to point out, and this may sound like a broken record to some of you, is that how we learn to deal with anger is how our parents dealt with it, and specifically for men, how our fathers dealt with anger, if they're around. So what was modeled to us is really what we have learned how to deal with our stuff. And even if we had stellar parents and fathers that were okay with anger and actually demonstrate anger in a good way, we also have the societal influence of how we see anger in everything from sports to movies to TVs, TV and sitcoms and all that kind of stuff. Because anger is it's a very it's out there. You definitely see it, and that's what we see more than the stuff that people don't want to deal with. Because hockey would be pretty boring if guys talking about how they were frustrated with the other team winning and they had to go out and send an enforcer or whatever you want to say. So we're reinforced all the time to go to anger more than to deal with the emotions that we don't want to feel, the stuff that is kind of ugly and distasteful. So here's that question, guys. And maybe you just want to turn off the video now, but how do you deal with your anger? How are you engaged in anger? How friendly is anger to you? Are you considered to be an angry person? Are you pissed off? Is that a place you go to very quickly? And do you want to keep being that way? Do you want people to see you as being angry? Do you want your children to kind of think of you and think of, oh yeah, dad was always angry? Because you don't have to be. It's a choice. It really is. It's a choice to be angry. It's like it's a choice to be confused, or it's a choice to be willfully ignorant. And the more we're disconnected for our authentic selves, the more we compensate in other ways to deal with that stuff. So what are you going to do about your anger? I know I've had to look at mine. I know I had a huge chip on my shoulder that sometimes rears its ugly head. But what do you want out of life? And how do you want to live in your skin for the rest of your life? And what do you want the latter part of your life to look like? Whatever time that comes to you. If that's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever that means. But really, think about it. Luc Bouchard with Solve Act Life Coaching Services. I've been a certified life skills coach and teaching anger management for a while. I thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day. Take care, and see you tomorrow for video 35, 36.